It was unfair then, it's worse now. It's time to admit that something is very, very off. Innovative solutions, unlocking the full potential is unlocking the full potential. Cultural biases, optimizing inclusivity. The stakes simply couldn't be higher.
In the first part of her speech, UN Goodwill Ambassador Anne Hathaway has made sure to talk about equality in the broadest sense of the word, thereby presupposing and oversimplifying what it means.
The reality in which we find ourselves is that at the current rate of progress, it may take another 300 years to achieve gender equality. I hope we all agree this is 3 centuries too long.
By using equality in the broadest sense of the word, Hathaway and the organization she represents can keep moving the goalpost for what the term means in order to stay relevant and keep making money in different zeitgeists. That's how the word was redefined, from equality of opportunity, which is fair for everyone, to equality of outcome, which is more concerned with people's innate characteristics than their talent and merits. What all of this is really about is to get men and women to make money for the state, since taxing 2 incomes is obviously more profitable than taxing 1. However, they can't say that, so they disguise this purpose as caring about each individual's safety and happiness, and do everything they can to play on people's indignation, when the truth is that money is what it's really about.
That equality between women and men make us all safer, happier, more prosperous, and more successful. The pandemic had a devastating impact on us all, but it hit women especially hard. Women's incomes, as well as their contributions to businesses' success and the recovery of markets, matter even more than ever. We do not equally value women's participation, contribution, and leadership. This year, in 169 countries and areas, that's most of the world, women's labor force participation is expected to stay below pre-pandemic levels. What can we attribute this to? Well, it's my regret to share with you that during the pandemic, women did an additional 512 billion hours of unpaid care work at home.
Numbers give the impression that a complex issue is countable and precisely defined. Hathaway gives the impression that these billions of hours are precisely defined, and she delivers these statistics, so-called, as if they're objectively true and adequate. However, she deliberately doesn't factor in the hundreds of independent variables that must always be considered when presenting statistics. How should care work be defined? Who were the participants? How many hours did they work outside the home? Thus, the general message, disguised as good intentions.
Another threat to women's safety was the seismic loss of economic opportunities.
Is that women are to work for the system and not in the home. The next part of her speech reaches new levels of dishonest argumentation. Let's watch.
While I let that statistic sink in, I would like to acknowledge the essential importance of care. Care is fundamental to the basic functioning of our economies and societies, and I'm not meaning to suggest otherwise.
No, of course not. That must be why she's even bringing it up. Considering that she doesn't mean to suggest otherwise, it's strange that she goes on to downgrade care.
In fact, the reality is, everyone will need care at some point in their life. However, we must also recognize the reality that the current way care is provided and valued is unfair and unsustainable. We must address the cultural biases that automatically label care as women's work.
This is a prime example of a speaker using theatrics in form of intonation and laughter as means of persuasion.
However, the reality as women's work.
As if what she's saying is so self-evidently true that she shouldn't even have to say it.
Everyone will need care at some point in their life.
It's always nice to learn something new. This condescendingly simple point is yet another way of downgrading care.
Is unfair and unsustainable.
Yes, we can't have people choosing something that Hathaway and her allies don't want them to choose. That's unsustainable and cultural bias, to use a few buzzwords. I mean, it's not like Hathaway has a bias against care. People like Hathaway will use any word, concept, or profession to keep feeding their narrative. Now the time has come for the word care. But of course, we must keep in mind that she's not bringing it up to suggest that care is in any way inferior.
And I'm not meaning to suggest otherwise.
Hathaway's colleagues use similar tactics, playing on the same demographics indignation and being as oversimplistic as possible.
That 67% of the top critics reviewing the 100 highest grossing movies were white males. So you're probably thinking right now, like, wow, that super doesn't represent the country that I live in, and that's because that's true. Other people besides white dudes like Star Wars and would love the opportunity to do a set visit.
It always seemed suspicious, like gives up her 6 or 7 figure job that she loves and has invested so much time into because she never considered she might need to find childcare for her kid. And the reason women in nearly every industry are not represented in powerful positions is because women are being discriminated against. So what can you do? First, money. You can give or you can raise money for the Legal Defense Fund. Be embarrassed if everyone in your workplace looks like you. Pay attention to physical ability, gender identity. If a man says to you that a woman is crazy or difficult, ask him, what bad thing did you do to her?
However, we must also recognize the reality.
It's so nice to see that Hathaway's inability to ground her claims hasn't stopped her from acting assertive.
Even before the pandemic, women spent more than 3 times as many hours as men on unpaid care and domestic work. It was unfair then, it's worse now. It's time to admit that something is very, very off.
I find it inspiring how Hathaway can read numbers, without considering independent variables, of course, who needs them, and still manage to look scared in a totally convincing way.
Very, very off.
Numbers truly are designed to make complex issues seem simple and precisely defined. And there's nothing like having celebrities decide how families should delegate tasks and judging them harshly in the process.
Whether or not we mean to, the fact is, we are taking advantage of women. Simply put, we must stop penalizing women for caring.
Yes, that was indeed simply put, much too simple. As if each individual family can't be trusted to delegate tasks without penalizing anyone. What Hathaway is actually saying is that the organization she represents will make more money if both parents spend time away from their families to work in corporations and institutions. It sounds like she really cares about and thinks highly of the demographic she's disingenuously trying to persuade.
UN Women has observed the care that's appreciated and properly valued in all its form is a critical missing link in unlocking the full potential of women in the economy and in society, which is, of course, the same thing as unlocking the full potential of everyone in the economy and society.
What Hathaway euphemizes as
unlocking the full potential
is a matter of redistribution. Money from one area that goes to another area, in this case, care. But new management speak sounds a lot better than talking about cost, how much more this will cost the taxpayers. She consistently uses laughter to make what she's saying sound self-evidently true and thus prevent objections. However, to people who think critically, Hathaway's demeanor can come across as condescending.
Governments, businesses, and civil society can all play a role in this.
Yes, because governments don't have enough power. Let them decide what equality should mean. After all, they're big proponents of freedom.
I was at a dinner and heard you speaking about diversity and heard you speaking about a cabinet that was equal men and women. Today it is gender balance, 17 women, 17 men. It was clearly intentional. You've introduced a bill, C-25, to increase female representation on boards, to essentially sort of shame corporations into doing it. You nod.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Sure.
So by forcing a level of transparency and making people actually explicitly say what their plan is.
UN Women would like to propose these practical and immediate actions. Ask governments to support care services, pay the taxes that fund them, prioritize the creation of family-friendly workplaces.
And where does the money come from? Or rather, which area should the money be taken from? It wouldn't happen to be from all the millions of families where women are penalized for caring, would it? What this is really about is getting women to work for the state and not in the home. And Hathaway has consistently played on the demographics indignation to cover up for that. Next she speaks as if she's in a movie, a quite pretentious movie.
Love is the one thing we're capable of perceiving that transcends dimensions of time and space.
Sorry, wrong clip.
This is a moment when we must urgently act not only to restore what has been lost for women and girls, but to end the harmful status quo which keeps inequality thriving.
What Hathaway neglects to mention, first of all, is that she and the organization she represents have an interest in finding perceived inequality wherever they can, and secondly, that this speech shows how she and like-minded people seek to replace one kind of perceived oppression with another. The speech is literally about controlling equality, controlling what kind of equality we should have, which isn't equality of freedom at all.
The stakes simply couldn't be higher.
The stakes never can, according to politicians and celebrities. Everything they talk about is always urgent. It's so strange. In that regard, it's interesting that Hathaway adds the modifier simply, suggesting that the stakes actually could be higher. But then again, everything in the speech has to be simple, because it can't stand scrutiny. And next, it's time for more buzzwords, because that'll make the speech better.
The world, not just women, needs innovative solutions more than ever. Optimizing inclusivity is our best chance at success.
Yes, it's so inclusive. That must be why Hathaway and the UN don't trust families to delegate tasks and spend their own money. Inclusive always points to ideas and groups of people that the speaker wants to exclude.
You know, I'm a businesswoman. I had a really clear job to do when I took over Bud Light. What does evolve and elevate mean? It means inclusivity. Bud Light had been kind of a brand of fratty, kind of out of touch humor.
While say the word, even though it's been made more than clear that Hathaway's rhetoric takes advantage of the very demographic she claims is being taken advantage of, she portrays herself as an advocate for this demographic, starting with more unreliable pathos.
I urge you, put women at the heart of economic growth and recovery. Be the architects of a better future by doing what no one else has effectively done before. Prioritize women for the good of all.
Yes, because no one's done that before. I mean, it's not like buzzwords like diversity and representation are in every corporation today. Hathaway ends where she started, with a focus on people's innate characteristics first and foremost, not their talent and merits.
Put women at the heart of economic growth and recovery.
Translation time. Prioritize that both parents are working outside the home. Give more money to family-friendly workplaces, not families. Hathaway's speech is one of many that use a minimum of grounds and a maximum of accusations. This kind of persuasion is disingenuous and condescending.
I would like to acknowledge the essential importance of care.
The old world will shatter, and the pieces that no longer serve will melt. A new world will emerge, forged from this community. LGBTQIAAP.
It's time to admit that something is very, very off.
Gentlemen. Gentle them.
This esteemed group, which I am honored to address today, find themselves tasked with making decisions that shape lives.
Sarah McBride gave me a note from a 10-year-old transgender girl named Ella. In this note, Ella thanked me for my courage as an ally.
Governments, businesses, and civil society can all play a role in this.
If you like this progressive video, unlock your full potential and click the like button, and subscribe for more sustainable videos. Simply put,